Most people think the Appalachian Mountains are quiet. Empty trails, endless trees, nothing but wind and distance. But the people in these stories didn't feel alone. They noticed it in the silence. Footsteps that didn't match their own, breathing where no one should have been, the feeling of being watched just a second too long. Tonight, these are 3 allegedly true horror stories from deep in Appalachia. And in every one of them, someone realized the same thing too late. I grew up camping in the Appalachian Mountains. My dad took me every summer, and by the time I was in my 20s, being alone in the woods felt normal, comforting even. I knew how to read trails, how to ration food, how to stay calm when plans went wrong. That confidence is probably why I made the mistake of going out alone that weekend. I parked near a trailhead I'd used before, nothing remote, nothing extreme. Just a 2-night solo trip to clear my head. The weather was stable, no storms in the forecast, and I told 2 people exactly where I'd be. I wasn't reckless. At least I didn't think I was. The hike in was uneventful. The trees were thick, the air cool and damp, the kind that carries sound farther than you expect. By late afternoon, I found a flat clearing not far from the trail and set up camp. From where I stood, I could see the mountains rolling away in layers, dark blue, fading into gray. That night was quiet. Too quiet, but I slept anyway. The next morning, I decided to explore farther than planned. Just a short loop, I told myself. I left most of my gear at camp and followed what looked like a faint side trail, probably an old game path or a washed-out hiking route. It sloped downhill, winding between trees that blocked the sky. After about 40 minutes, I realized I hadn't seen a trail marker in a long time. I stopped, turned around, and tried to retrace my steps. Everything looked different from this angle. Trees that had seemed familiar on the way down, now blended together. I walked for another 10 minutes before the uneasy thought settled in my chest. I was lost. Not panic lost. Not yet. But lost enough that my sense of direction stopped feeling reliable. I pulled out my phone, no signal. Compass said north, but the terrain didn't match what I remembered. That's when I saw something in the distance. Across a shallow valley, far enough that I couldn't make out details, there was a dark shape, standing between the trees. At first I thought it was a stump or a rock formation, but it was too upright, too narrow. I stared at it for a long time, waiting for it to resolve into something normal. It didn't move. I told myself it was just my depth perception playing tricks on me and kept walking, angling uphill to regain elevation. As I moved, I noticed something else. Footsteps, not close, far away, slow, deliberate. Each one spaced just slightly too evenly to be random. I stopped. The footsteps stopped too. That's when the fear kicked in. I stood there listening, my heart thudding so loud I was sure it would give me away if someone really was out there. After a few seconds, I took a single step forward. A step answered back. Same rhythm. Same timing. I didn't call out. I didn't run. I just started walking faster, keeping my breathing steady, pretending desperately that this was coincidence. Leaves crunched behind me. Not directly following, but never fading. When I reached a ridge and looked back toward the valley, the shape was gone. I don't remember how long it took me to find my way back to camp. I just remember moving, constantly checking over my shoulder, jumping at every snapped twig. At one point, I heard footsteps again, much closer this time, but when I turned, there was nothing there, just trees, just shadows. I packed up and left early that afternoon, abandoning half my food and gear. I never saw whatever it was up close. I can't describe it. That's what bothers me most, because I know the difference between wildlife and something watching you. And whatever was out there didn't want to be seen. My girlfriend and I planned the hike as a day trip. Nothing extreme, just a marked trail in the Appalachian Mountains that looped through a stretch of forest and came back out near a scenic overlook. We'd done similar hikes dozens of times before, usually finishing before dark and grabbing food on the drive home. That day didn't feel strange at first. The trailhead was quiet, but not abandoned a few cars, an information board with faded maps, the usual warning signs about wildlife and weather. We started mid-morning, the air cool enough that our breath showed when we laughed. After about 2 hours of hiking, the trail narrowed and dipped into a more wooded section. The trees were taller here, closer together, blocking most of the sunlight. Sound behaved differently too. Conversations felt muffled, like the forest was absorbing them. That's when we noticed the lodge. It sat just off the trail, partially hidden by trees. A small hiker's shelter, old, wooden, and clearly not maintained anymore. The roof sagged slightly, and one of the windows was cracked. It didn't appear on the trail map. At first, we were excited. It felt like we'd stumbled onto something forgotten. As we got closer, that feeling changed. There were signs someone had been staying there recently. Not long-term, but not old either. A rolled sleeping bag in the corner. Empty food wrappers that hadn't fully faded. Ash in a fire pit outside that looked fresh enough to still be gray instead of white. No one was there, though. My girlfriend whispered that maybe it was just another hiker resting nearby. That explanation didn't sit right with me. If someone was camping, we should have heard them or seen a pack or smelled smoke. We didn't linger. We took a few photos and stepped back onto the trail, both of us quieter now. About 10 minutes later, we started hearing noises. At first, it sounded like animals moving through brush. That wasn't unusual, but the sounds didn't match anything we recognized. Not deer, not birds, not even something like a bear or a boar. It was lower, rougher, almost like a series of short, strained breaths, mixed with movement. We stopped walking. The noises kept going. They moved around us, never too close, but never far enough to fade. When we took a step, they paused. When we stopped, they started again. That's when my girlfriend squeezed my hand hard enough to hurt. Then we heard a man shout. It wasn't a word, just a loud, sharp yell that cut through the forest and echoed off the trees. Close enough that it sent a jolt through my chest, but far enough that we couldn't see anyone. I yelled back instinctively, asking if someone needed help. There was no answer. Instead, the animal noises stopped completely. The silence that followed felt wrong, like everything had shut down at once. No birds, no wind, nothing. We didn't talk about it. We just turned around and walked back the way we'd come. Faster now. Not running, but not pretending anymore either. Every few steps I looked over my shoulder, expecting to see someone standing between the trees. We never did. We reached the trailhead without hearing anything else, got in the car, and drove home without stopping. Only later, sitting in our apartment with the door locked, did we start talking about it. The lodge didn't show up on any maps when we looked it up, and neither of us could explain why that shout sounded so angry or why it felt like it wasn't meant for us to hear at all. There were 5 of us hiking that evening, trying to make it back to the car before dark. The trail cut along the side of the mountain, narrow in places with steep drops hidden just beyond the trees. We weren't lost just behind schedule. As the light started fading, the forest changed. Sounds carried farther. Every footstep echoed longer than it should have. That's when we noticed we weren't the only ones moving. At first, it sounded like someone else hiking nearby, branches snapping, leaves crunching, but the rhythm was wrong. Too slow, too careful. It stayed just out of sight, always matching our pace, never getting closer, never falling behind. Someone joked about it being another group. No one laughed. We picked up speed, so did the footsteps. Then, somewhere downslope to our right, we heard breathing. Deep. Heavy. Not panicked, patient. Like whoever it belonged to had plenty of time. We stopped walking. The breathing stopped too. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then one of my friends whispered, "Do you see that?" Between the trees, further down the slope, something shifted. Tall, thin, just a shape, barely outlined against the dark. It didn't step forward, it didn't step back. It just stood there. We didn't wait to understand it. We turned and ran, not caring about noise or footing, slipping and crashing through brush, until the trail finally opened up near the parking area. When we reached the cars, gasping and shaking, the forest behind us was silent again. No footsteps, no breathing, just the trees, standing exactly where they'd always been, like nothing had followed us at all. If you're still watching, it means you made it out. Most people don't talk about what happens in those mountains. They just leave and don't go back. But the stories stay. If you want to hear more accounts like these, subscribe. And if there's a video on your screen right now, click it. Because whatever was out there doesn't usually stop following you just because the story ends.